Tua Osomfo Prince Amponsan and America say, me a Tesco president at Anglican University College of Technology. So, me call YouTube channel na so channel me follow any NPP Grassroots TV. NPP Grassroots TV. The Excellency Okwa Kai, na subscribe, share, na comment, see a baby who nema NPP eye won peso.
In Oxford, arguably the greatest center of learning in the world. I thank the conveners and organizers of the 2021 EBII Africa Investments Risk and Compliance Summit for the invitation to give this address. It is appropriate that a speech on financial crime compliance and ECSG, the future of African investment, should take place in these hallowed premises of Oxford, which have provided the stage for many a thought-provoking speech. Hopefully, this one will follow in this tradition. We are all agreed that for Africa to be able to transform herself and become the epitome of economic empowerment and self-reliance, she needs to have the wherewithal to be able to protect and optimize the resources at her disposal. Hence the need to build robust financial compliance systems and ensure strict enforcement of these systems. And the reason for this is that financial crime has, over the past 30 years, become a major concern for governments around the globe, as it represents a significant threat to the development and stability of the economies of countries around the world. I'm happy that a theme of this nature, which is a regular feature of deliberations for investors in Europe, America, and Asia, should have Africa as its focus. I'm saying so because Africa, which since ancient times has been defined by outsiders in the oft-cited statement, Sempera liquid novi Africa Matferi, is the continent that always provides something new, something strange to surprise or excite the rest of the world, or the place for adventure, or the place to be exploited. It is the place where the normal rules that guide behavior elsewhere can be and are suspended. Once it is the continent of Africa, things must necessarily be somewhat different. From as far back as we can think, it would seem that the world has always seen and dealt with Africa in a manner that is different from how other parts of the world are regarded and treated. The rules that have been drawn up to guide the rest of the world in trading, investment, ethics, environment, governance, and which are accepted as part of normal convention, are thrown out or changed when the area of operation moves from Oxford to Cape Coast. If the African continent were not seen as a place where regular rules can be and are regularly flouted, I dare say we would not be gathered here today to grapple with the subject of this conference. Top of the problem, of course, is that there's so little trade between African countries and so little intra-investment among African nations. And thus, when we talk about investment in Africa, the reference is instinctively to non-Africans. And until about a decade ago, when China made the significant entry into Africa, investment in our continent was limited to Western companies and countries. It is not surprising, therefore, that the Western countries carried into the investment arena the same attitude they had towards African countries as their former colonies. The emergence of the African Continental Free Trade Area, the AFCFTA, in which trading began on 1st January, and whose Secretariat Ghana is privileged to host, represents a historic opportunity for Africa to repudiate these attitudes and strengthen immeasurably intra-African trade as a powerful avenue for developing Africa's vast economic and material potential. It is important to state clearly that we do not ask for Africa to be treated as a special, fragile, to be handled with care entity. I'm not mounting a pulpit to preach or ask that doing business with or in Africa should be along biblical, Quranic, or other such rules. Throughout history, when new markets emerge, there have always been buccaneers who have taken chances and have made fortunes. No one begrudges them. Often the rules and regulations follow the new frontier, but it's generally accepted that the cowboy attitudes must give way to legal, settled, and predictable rules that will guide all behavior and transactions. I believe it is fair to say that we have been, quote, emerging, unquote, for long enough for us to be treated with the same rules that apply in the so-called old markets. Recent experience has shown that financial crises and scandals do not happen only in emerging markets. Need I remind all of us that the British merchant bank, Barings Banks, was founded in 1762, and at the time of its spectacular collapse in 1995, was rated amongst the largest and most stable banks in the world. Then there was the heart-stopping and even more spectacular collapse of Lehman Brothers in 2008, which brought down with it almost the entire financial setup of the world. It was certainly not an emerging institution, having been around since 1850 and controlling far more money and wielding far more power than the Republic of Ghana. I do not want to belabor the point. When rules are flouted, the consequences are dire, even for the most established of institutions. The lesson is clear. There must be rules, and they must be obeyed. To compensate for being new in the market, African countries have been persuaded throughout the years to give extraordinarily generous terms to would-be investors. Unfortunately, we have not received the expected outcomes. Ladies and gentlemen, the clear lesson is that it is better to be rated as an ordinary space where regular profits can be made than to be treated as a place for extraordinary profits because you're rated by would-be investors as dangerous territory. The officials might get extra compensation for traveling to us, but our companies and governments will not get better terms. When people come to Africa to do business, especially when they come to invest, they must know exactly what to expect. They must know that they have come to a continent where there's the rule of law, a police service that can be counted on to deal fairly and speedily with the law and order issues that come up every day. They must know that there's an independent and efficient judiciary that will preside over and resolve the frictions and disputes that come with all human activities. And they must know that they will meet tax agencies that are capable of ensuring meticulous scrutiny over their transactions. If we are to make our countries attractive places for investors and ensure that our citizens benefit from their activities, we need more than accountants. Let us take mining, for example, which is an important industry in Ghana and requires investors with very deep pockets. We in Ghana will start from the premise that we know the investors have come to do business. They have not come to do charity work. We would look out for the investor who cares about our environment. And remember in all our negotiations that when the last bit of gold or diamond is taken out, the investor would leave having made a reasonable profit on his investment. The environment that is left behind should still be in satisfactory condition. Ladies and gentlemen, this is something I've said elsewhere, and I'll repeat it here too. I believe the African diaspora has a critical role to play in leading the drive for investment into the continent. Their members have the expertise and would have the empathy to drive change far more quickly and smoothly than other people. We have the example of the Chinese diaspora, which led the investment drive in China some 40 years ago and have helped transform that country's economy in such a dramatic manner. Those of us who live on the continent must, of course, do our part to make it easier to conduct business, and we're doing it. In Ghana, we have embarked on a serious digitization program to reduce the many frustrations that we all face in everyday activities in the country. It might not sound like a big deal to an audience in Oxford, but it is one of the proudest achievements of my administration that I'm able to say we now have digital addresses and you can find your way around the country without having to resort to the proverbial turning left at the blue kiosk. A survey earlier this week cited Ghana as having the fastest internet speed in Africa. That only places at number 79 in the world, but we're working on it and we shall keep on improving. It is now much easier to pay taxes and clear goods from the ports as we have systematically removed the spots that have been the historical areas of friction and frustration. Every day brings a deliberate improvement. And there is the matter of credit rating agencies and lenders adding an African risk premium, which makes it expensive to raise sustainable and competitive long-term capital to support transformation. The matter of the African risk premium, when borrowing from the market, even as the continent provides the highest return on investments obtainable anywhere in the globe, must be addressed. It represents an unfair and illegitimate avenue for the export of capital from the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been going on at some length about the measures we're taking to make it easier to conduct business, to enable us to get more revenue, to be able to meet the many development needs of our countries. Unfortunately, it is part of the reality on our continent that there are huge illicit financial outflows. Indeed, in 2015, the highly respected former President of the Republic of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, as chair of the high-level panel that produced a report on illicit financial flows from Africa, commissioned by the Joint African Union Commission and the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa Conference of African Ministers for Finance, Planning and Economic Development, revealed that Africa is losing annually more than 50 billion United States dollars through illicit financial outflows. 5 years later, according to UNCTAD's Economic Development in Africa report of 2020, the figure has gone up from 50 billion United States dollars to 88.6 billion United States dollars each year. That is a lot of money in any currency, and it is money we ill afford to forego. It is money that will make a significant addition to the investable funds of the continent. Persons, largely the multinational companies who come to do business in Africa, are undoubtedly involved in these illicit transactions with the complicity of some Africans. We must therefore build robust financial compliance systems and ensure strict enforcement as a deterrent. A strong regulatory environment, whilst reducing these illicit outflows, would in the end lead to more private capital being attracted to the continent for genuine investment. The OECD's new initiative that will require multinationals to pay tax in countries where they have commercial, not jurisdictional presence, is a welcome step in addressing this injustice. The acid test of our friendship with countries which are the hosts of these multinational corporations should be the extent to which they oblige them to comply with this new initiative. I'm glad to note that this principle has been publicly accepted by the G7 nations at their recent conference here in England in Cornwall, with a proposal for a 15% minimum tax rate for multinational groups on their revenues from from the countries of operation. It is clearly a positive step in the right direction. We in Africa must be both vocal in defense of our interests and vigorous in promoting remedial measures. Ladies and gentlemen, it was a great relief to us in Ghana recently when a Financial Action Task Force, FATF, publication reported on Ghana exiting the FATF grey list as a result of the country's successful efforts in addressing the deficiencies identified during the second round of mutual evaluation. The FATF, and for that matter, the international community, have renewed their confidence in Ghana's anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism regime. Indeed, the Republic of Ghana is proud of the vote of confidence in its financial system. This is probably the point at which I should draw attention to the fact that many of the regulatory requirements put in place are cumbersome and expensive for small countries. For example, the FATF's recommendation 32 requires countries to take measures to prevent terrorists and criminals from using cash couriers to finance their activities and launder their funds. Countries are required to implement a compulsory declaration system requiring everyone crossing a border and transporting currency or bearing negotiable instruments of a value exceeding a certain threshold to declare it to the authorities. To Africa's predominantly cash-based economies, this is a daunting task. You might thus find your country falling foul of the regulations, not because you have done anything wrong, but because you do not have the means to keep up with the paperwork. It would be worthwhile for all stakeholders to agree on efficient, workable measures. And yet, there's not really an option of opting out. A recent report put the cost of financial crime compliance across all financial institutions globally at an all-time high of 180 billion United States dollars for the year 2020. Yes, compliance is indeed very expensive, but at the end of the day, it cannot be compared with the cost of non-compliance, sanctions, the reputational damage, and loss of investors to a country. If Africa is to be an integral part of the financial world, we would have to demonstrate that we can play by the rules, just as the investor community should, and thereby safeguard the future of African investments. Ghana will do her part to realize Africa's manifest destiny. Ghana has led the way in Africa from the Pan-African independence movement, the founding of the Organization of African Unity, and its conversion into the African Union, and as the pillar of stability and beacon of democracy in West Africa. Together, working with the rest of our brothers and sisters on the continent, and with our increasingly educated, skilled, dynamic, and growing youthful population, I'm confident we can help construct a prosperous and self-confident Africa, which will enable her build a progressive civilization that will make its own contribution to the growth of world civilization. In Ghana, our objective is a Ghana beyond aid, and perhaps by extension, we can speak of an Africa beyond aid. I thank you for your attention, and may God bless us all.
Eshi kukrudu, eshi rado. Abusuya osomfo Prince Amponsan and America say, me a Tesco president at Anglican University College of Technology. So me call YouTube channel na so channel me follow any NPP Grassroots TV. NPP Grassroots TV. The Excellency okwa kai na subscribe, share na comment, see be hu enema NPP eye won peso aso. Yetimi abohu dawuru ama mansan nyina so ahu de ekoso. De ya na say ye bo NPP nyuma pa omu ye hu dawuru e wo Ghana ni wiase afa na nyina. Ti the Excellency say bomodia na subscribe, na share na comment, na titiru pa o subscribe, no wa share, no wa comment. na yɛtumi abɔ NPP nnwuma pa ho dawuro ne nyinaa is about NPP ne din bio yɛ NPP Grassroots TV meda wase sɛ ɔbɛn saa